Right. Saucy, glossy, gorgeous, luscious. This is the dinner that you have during the week when you're like, this is what I need. I need that comfort. I need the pasta. I need the cheese. That noodle had a noodle inside of it. It was noodle tunnel. It was like infinity of noodles inside of noodles. It didn't make me upset though. Hey guys, it's Carla. I am here again for another episode of That Sounds So Good. That Sounds So Good is my book, and it's also this show. And today I'm going to be showing you a pasta from the weeknight section of the book from Stovetop Suppers. This is my take on cacio e pepe. It's called cacio e walnut. If you don't already know this, cacio e pepe is one of the 3 classic, iconic dishes of Rome. So there's cacio e pepe, there's carbonara, and alla gricia. What they have in common is that they pull from ingredients that are native to Italy and that are prized in Italy and have very few ingredients. So this is no exception. The difference between this version and the literal thousands of versions of cacio e pepe recipe videos that you could watch is that I've changed things up just a little bit to solve for some of the pitfalls that happen with that dish. Often what happens to people is that the sheep smoked cheese, the pecorino toscano, is too sharp, too pungent, and people get turned off. It's too salty. It's just too much. Other thing that happens a lot is that when building the sauce in the skillet, the cheeses clump up and separate instead of melting into like a beautiful glossy situation. I'm bringing a little bit of crunch to the party. I have a slightly different cheese that makes things really melty and smooth. I've got walnuts for crunch. I've got a little garlic for depth. If you've tried cacio e pepe in the past and not loved the results, give this one a try. All right, so to start, I'm just gonna get everything prepped up. My water's already going. I need a cup of walnuts. These are raw walnuts, haven't been toasted, and I'm actually gonna toast them in the oil with a good amount of black pepper. They're here for flavor, but also for crunch. And so I don't wanna go too fine with this because part of their purpose is to give a textural contrast. And I'm also adding a good amount of garlic. If you don't care for garlic, you can leave it out, but I started making a version of cacio e pepe with garlicky oil when I was in college, and it was something I ate a lot of because it was really inexpensive. It was pantry ingredients that I could find in my college town, and it was really filling. And so I brought it back. Reliving my youth here with you and my pasta. I also just love garlic. And maybe this is like where my nutrition was coming from. So that dish had carbs and fat and dairy. Dairy has vitamin C. And then, yeah, I was just fending off like inflammation and vampire attacks with the amount of garlic. If I was feeling fancy, I would put string beans in it. When I cook the walnuts, they're gonna be cooking alongside the garlic. And as long as these are kind of smashed at this point, they'll get smashed down a little bit more while I'm cooking, but I don't wanna do them in slices because I don't want them to burn. And I also like the idea of these big kind of craggy pieces of toasted garlic. Oh, my phone is ringing. It's probably Cosmo. Kazi. Hi. You okay? Oh, you sound down. Okay. Are you coming home? What are you doing? I'm shooting. This is your cameo. Cosmo says hi. Okay. See ya. Bye. He just has to get on camera one way or another. Like if he could do a ba-dum-bum like over the phone, he would. All right, so those guys are done. Now I need my cheeses. Cacio e pepe can be made with 100% pecorino, 100% Parmigiano, or it could be made with a blend. I love Parm. We're not gonna mess with the Parm part of that recipe, but instead of pecorino, I'm using Manchego. Manchego is a Spanish cheese. It has a softer texture, so it melts really nicely. It's also a sheep's milk cheese, so you're getting that like nod to the original sheepiness of the pecorino with a cheese that is not going to clump up. It's not dry. It's not too pungent. It's not too salty. All right, so I'm going to grate the Manchego on the large holes of the box grater. Sometimes I find that microplaned cheese, while kind of convenient and ethereal in its like little snowy way that it floats down, something about it can sometimes get stringy. And I don't know if that's just kind of anecdotal or has only happened to me. Okay, so there's the Manchego. And then same thing with the parm. When you're buying parm, I definitely recommend buying the hunk. Buy it only pre-grated if you're at like a cheese shop where you know they're grating it like every day. Once parm has been grated, its flavor starts to change and transform and get muted like pretty much immediately. And when you are buying it, make sure that you see the stamp for the Parmigiano Reggiano, because any real parm will have this stamp on the outside of the cheese, and that's how you know that you're not getting ripped off. All right, the last thing I'm going to do is chop the parsley. And for the parsley, I'm going for just a rough chop. So once I had the idea to sub Manchego for the pecorino, because I was just thinking about other sheep's milk cheeses that might melt without getting clumpy, the walnut really made sense to me in more of like a Spanish way, because like walnuts and Manchego go together as flavors so nicely. Okay, I'm going to toast my walnuts and my garlic, get the pepper going, cook the pasta, and bring it all together. The recipe calls for 1/3 cup of extra virgin olive oil. If you want to cut this recipe in half because you're a smaller group of people, that's great. But this is how much olive oil you need. I don't know why I sound so defensive about it. It just is what it is. I'm not going to do this super high. I want time to control the nuts browning, the garlic getting toasty. I don't want to feel rushed. I don't want to burn my garlic and have the inside be raw. I definitely debated, like, could you just toast the walnuts in the oven and cook the garlic in the oil and then bring them together? But like, why would I want to turn on the oven for this pasta dish if I have to use the saucepan anyway? Now for the pepe part of the cacio e pepe and walnut. It's a good amount of pepe. It is, again, like one of the primary and important flavors in this dish. It's gonna taste good if you took this down, but this is really what a cacio e pepe is all about. And adding the pepper to this mixture rather than to the cheese mixture. And at the end, it's actually blooming the pepper in the oil. So all of the essential oils and flavors and unmeasurable things about the pepper are getting bloomed and coaxed out in the oil. Smells great. It sounds great. And I'm going to use the side of the spoon to just press down a bit on my smashed garlic cloves. I think if you don't like biting into pieces of garlic, this technique is kind of handy because you're going to get all the flavor of the garlic cooked out into the oil. But if you wanted to, you could avoid the pieces of garlic because they're large. So I'm looking at the nuts kind of on the edges. So where the inside of the walnut is that like really light beige color at the beginning, I'm starting to see sort of toasty little bits on the sides. So the nuts, even though they don't look like crispy exactly, they're toasting. They're toasting. I'm gonna leave this in the pan The pan is hot, the oil is hot. Everything is like on the verge of being done, just slightly underdone. But if I turn the heat off and slide this back, it's gonna finish cooking. Okay, water's boiling. We're gonna get our salt in there. Lots of salt, as always. This is how the pasta gets seasoned. And I've got a pound of this shape called packery. I just think these are fun to eat, and also tube shapes are great for this kind of sauce because like pieces of walnut are gonna end up inside the tube, and it's just like makes it a really fun thing to eat. So now that the pasta is in the water and the clock is ticking on that, the sizzling with the garlic and walnut mixture has subsided. I'm just gonna season the nuts and garlic with a little bit of salt, and then everything is ready. The reason I'm using a Dutch oven to cook the pasta is because I'm gonna build the sauce in this pot. Dutch ovens are really great for saucing and tossing your pasta when it's done because they're like generously proportioned and they have these high sides, so you can really get in there and toss things around and throw your pasta water in and get your sauce to emulsify without making like a giant mess on the countertop or having noodles like escape out the side. And I'm telling you that because that's normally what I would do. All right, my pasta is very, very, very al dente. Because I'm gonna finish the pasta in the sauce, it's smart to undercook it. So I'm pulling out 2 cups of pasta water, approximately, and then I'm gonna drain the pasta and put it right back into this pot. Okay, I'm gonna put this over pretty low heat. I want something. Walnut, garlic, oil, pepper mixture going straight in. So I'm just gonna toss to coat and then start adding pasta water and cheese. So I'm gonna start with about half of the pasta water, around a cup. And this isn't gonna make the pasta watery. This is giving liquid that's seasoned, that's gonna give the cheese something to melt into. And this is how you create an emulsion between the noodles, the fat that's coating the noodles, and the cheese that is being added. If you forgot to scoop out your pasta water because you were excited that your pasta was al dente, use tap water. It's not gonna be the end of the world. As long as you have some liquid, you're fine. You might need to season it a little more heavily with salt, but the amount of starch that is in the pasta water is not gonna make or break it, despite what you may have heard. So at this point, I want my heat low. If the heat's on too high, the cheese could like clump, and making sure that there's enough water in here to help the cheese like on its way to creaminess. And it already looks like super creamy and gorgeous. Once that first part of the cheese has melted, I'm gonna go ahead and add more. Just giving it a chance to melt before like dumping all of it in at once. Stirring, tossing, noodles going up the side of the Dutch oven. It's getting stretchy, it's getting creamy. It looks really good. For some reason, I always crave this every time I get off a flight and come home. Not that anyone's been on a plane ever in the past 2 years, but when I get home from being away, this is the dish that I want to make. Oh God, it's so luscious. It's so saucy. All right, I just have a little bit more cheese to add. So if your cheese does start to bead up or clump, lower the heat like all the way down, add at least a cup of water, and just stir and stir and stir and stir with a generous amount of liquid. The cheese will eventually smooth out and melt again. With the manchego though, it's just like not as nearly as likely to happen to you. Okay, it's done. She's saucy, she's glossy, she's absolutely stupendously shiny. Smooth, shiny, delicious dinner. All right. This is it. This is one of those dishes that like asses in seats. You know what I mean? Sitting, plate, fork, beverage, let's go. Waits for no one. So this looks gorgeous. There's enough like available sauce to give that really saucy feeling, but it's also in no way like watery or too loose. Like the noodles are really gorgeously dressed. I'm gonna throw the parsley on, just giving it a little freshen up, just for something bright, something green. If it's the one thing that you skip from this recipe, it's the one thing that would be okay with me. Okay, this is it. Noodle, who's my noodle? Okay. It's so good. You get a walnut and it's like so good. It's like a surprise walnut that you forgot was there because it's in like a cloak of cheese, but the flavor combo is so fantastic. There's noodles that have walnuts in them. So it's like a cheese walnut pocket. There's a walnut inside and there's walnut outside. And then there's a parsley sandwich. Cacio e pepe is a great dish. Period. End of story. Cacio e walnut is a great dish. Period. End of story. Both things can be great at the same time, and you yourself can enjoy the full range of the cacios and the pepes and the walnuts. I hope you try this version. Like and subscribe. That's it.